Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday and welcome to the First Time Storytelling broadcast. We are live on Facebook. My guest today on the First Time Storytelling broadcast, so it's actually a first for me. It's going to be the first time I'm going to interview two people. So my guests are Johnni and Gorges. They are the authors of the newly released children's book series, The Fuchs Family Adventures, and they're here to share the story of writing and publishing their first children's book. Welcome to the First Time Storytelling broadcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thankfully, we have a third guest walking around. So, Mom and Dad are doing an interview, and it's really awesome. All right, so your book just dropped. It just released. How long ago actually did it go live?
Just a few days ago. As we're recording it, it's June 1st, and I think we went live May 28th, so 3 days ago.
Fresh off the press. Now, what inspired you to write a children's book?
Well, that's all you.
So my daughter was born January of 2018, and that was when that really bad flu season was happening. So we couldn't have anybody over, and my mom ended up getting that flu. My whole family did, so nobody came to our house. He went back to work a week after I had her, so it was super stressful. We were very nervous. He works at a school, so the idea of having, him come home with the flu, and I was having my own emotional issues just because just having a baby and stuff. So I was home alone with our daughter, and I needed a way to get out of my own head. So I just kind of started writing, and I thought, it'd be really cute to have, this book, and for me, I'm not a writer. I don't even like to read. So for me, it was just like my own personal private project to where I'm like, okay, I'll just do this. And it's kind of helping me kind of get through this time when I was home alone. And then I didn't tell anybody. And then one day he caught me. I was doing stuff on the iPad, and he's like, what are you doing? And I said, oh, nothing. But I can't keep a secret to save my life. So he's like, no, what do you got there? And I said, well, for a couple weeks I've been working on this children's book, and that I've just kind of been writing this little story. And he goes, well, what? Well, his mom's an author. So he's all like, well, what are you writing? We'll talk to my mom. And I'm like, no. This is a private kind of thing going on here. So I showed it to him, and he was like, we could make this into a book to dedicate to our daughter. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm not, it's just me. It's just my own little thing. I was like, I don't know. So he said, let's talk to my mom. So I said, okay, fine. So we talked to his mom, sent her what I had wrote, and she was like, this is great. So she did some proofreading for us, kind of edited it and did all these different things. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, let's try to find somebody who can do our illustrations. And I'm like, all right. So a friend of ours is an amazing illustrator. He had his own comic strip in a newspaper for a few years. He's awesome. Approached him, and I said, hey, how do you feel about this? What do you think about doing the illustrations for this book? And he's like, I've always wanted to do an illustration like this to this scale. And I said, okay. So we provided him some rough draft ideas, as basic.
So
concept.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you there because I did read, because Chris sent me the link, so I did read. So I do want, you're providing a great, nice straight path, but it definitely had some curves. One, because as you're outlining it, you did say this started out in 2018, and so it has been a long project. So over 2 years that you have been working on this. Now, as you're writing this and you start seeing the story come to life, what is the theme? What is the story about? And because you're not a writer and you're not much of a reader, how did it feel to have this come out of you?
I was shocked that I never thought it was something that I could do. I could produce this. I didn't know I had it in me. So as I started doing this story, I thought, okay, maybe this is something that I actually can do. This might be something that is achievable. This goal, once it became more real, it became a goal for myself, like, okay, I want this book published. This is now a goal for me in my life to dedicate this book to my daughter. And the more we did it, the more of a reality it started to become. And it started feeling inspiring.
So was it all, so it's a family of fox. So what is the theme? And was it always fox from the beginning? Like, where did that come from?
So my daughter's nursery was set up with woodland creatures that were foxes and owls. I didn't like the idea of an owl family, mainly because I thought that'd be kind of weird. I don't know. It was just kind of like a harder thing to do. So I just picked the foxes from her bedroom, and I was like, well, that'd be kind of cute, you know, and I kind of spun it with that. But the moral of the story that I wanted it to have a you were learning something from it. There was something to be learned from this story. And with this particular one, it was about friendship and forgiveness. And so I wanted it to have a point.
So where did those themes come from? Because you're going through a situation where you're feeling isolated and you can't be exposed. You just had a new baby. So different themes than maybe what you would expect to come out of your situation. But why those themes? Like, what did those mean to you? What did they signify?
I guess because when we both worked at a school, he works at the school and I sub in at the schools, we see it a lot. And so for me, I was thinking years into the future with my daughter, okay, she's going to be going to school, she's going to be dealing with these other kids or these, these stories. I kind of wanted it to be something for her to read when she gets older, and it means something to her, like, oh, if something happens, I need to forgive, and making new friends and things like that. So I was just, as a mom, thinking so far into the future about my daughter's life, when she's little and going to school, and it just kind of transpired.
So when Chris said, hey, I want to show this to my mom. So when you write something, it's like you were saying, it's very private. You're like, this is not what I do. This is not my thing. Yeah. What did that feel like to put yourself out there, be vulnerable, share your work with somebody other than Chris, and then be prepared for whatever feedback might come?
I was okay with it. I have a really close relationship with his mom. So I was like, okay. But in my mind, I was like, okay, don't judge me though, because, it might not be grammatically correct, or, because there's a certain way you have to write in order for it. Because one of the things was, oh, are you wanting it to be past or present tense? And I'm like, I don't know. I was just, so she had to give me like examples and things like that and kind of talk to us about it. Like, okay, well, think about when you're reading it, think of these words that you're using. And I'm like, oh, okay. So she kind of helped, I don't know, give like a condensed lesson on how to write a book. And especially like a children's book, she's like, there's things you have to think about. And I was like, oh, okay. But I loved her feedback. She was always positive. So it felt nice. It did feel nice having another author give us this kind of feedback.
Okay, so now we'll get a little bit into the illustration. I'm just trying to figure out the timeline of the writing. So what's taking longer? The writing or the illustration, or you get the writing down and then the journey of the illustration?
Yeah, we talk about this all the time because it's funny because the writing aspect of the story ended up being the easiest part. Mm-hmm. Like the story had been done, I don't know, you probably finished it in a week or two. Mm-hmm. And then the entire rest of the 2.5 years has been putting that story and making it a reality. And a big part of that was the illustrations, like you had mentioned. And our friend, who is the artist, I originally was going to try to do the artwork for our book, but then I quickly realized that I'm not very good at cartoons. And if you go to the link that we sent, I have some of those original concept images that I was sketching up, and I mean, they're okay, but they're nowhere near the caliber that our friend was able to produce for us. And that really shows. And he's a professional artist and a cartoonist, and it was really nice to be able to have him. His name's Chris Cervantes, by the way, and we credit him in the article that we sent. And he's also on the front page of the book. But yeah, he's just an incredible artist. But it did take time. And the book ended up having about, I think, 24 pages worth of illustrations, and he hand painted them one at a time. And he was working full time throughout this entire process. So getting those illustrations one at a time did take a while to get the entire book illustrated. And then once that was finished, that was actually finished like about a year ago. The rest of it was putting it together. And you want to talk about mistakes?
We'll get into that now. Let's. What did it feel like to start seeing those illustrations, like the first one that he made, and you're seeing your character come to life? What was that like?
Yeah, that was a really cool moment, because we had been doing concept work for ourselves, but like I said, my pictures weren't really all that great and all that conveying. But then when he came up and he said, "Hey, this is my concept," and he had the main character Ben Fox, and he's like, and it was him on the beach with a sandcastle, and it was really. It was incredible to kind of like start to visualize what this book is going to start to look like.
So did that change things in your head? Like what you were seeing did all of a sudden your story get a different look?
It did, because in my mind I was like, okay, this is kind of what I wanted to look, but I'm not an artist by any means. So I left that up to him. I was like, this is what I'm wanting. Because he was like, well, give me some ideas. What kind of characters are you looking at? So I gave him some like rough draft ideas. Well, I kind of want him to be like this, like that. And he's like, okay. And so he took that and just developed these characters. And like Chris said, the first concept art that he presented us with, I was like, oh, that. I'm like, yes. And he's like, okay, this is just a rough draft. He goes, I'm just trying to get a feel for it. And then when he presented us with the very first picture that was like completed, I went, okay, this might go somewhere. This might be happening. We might be able to get this done.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, because it's one thing, and then to start seeing, because obviously the mannerism, there's so much that you imagine a character to be. And it's one thing to do it in a book where you're verbally trying to make it come alive. A children's book, you're, physically in an image, definitely making it come alive. So such a different experience. Okay, so now you have your artist, you have the story, and you're starting to pull it together. And you've never published a book before. You've never done a children's book before. So now you need to figure out, okay, how are we going to publish this? So what was the first step in that?
I called his mom. I called my mother-in-law, and I'm like, okay, how do we publish a book? How do we publish a book? And she said, well, there's a million different ways you can do this. So she talked to us about hiring a publisher, doing things like that. She goes, but what might be the easiest thing for you is to go through KDP. I did not know what that meant. And so I said, I'm going to hand that off to him.
Kindle Direct Publishing, by the way.
Yeah. And so she talked to us about that, mainly talked to him about it. And that's where he kind of took over the book. My job was done. I did everything. I approved all the artwork. I'm like, yeah, this looks great. And then he took over the more technical side with the publishing and doing everything like that. And that was a process.
All right, Chris. So tell us a little bit more about that process. I've published it through Amazon before, and it was not a children's book. And yes, just regular pages are difficult enough to publish. I can't imagine trying to do a layout of a children's book. So, and especially because you're getting the pictures are painted. So now they're getting scanned. So how are you doing this? Where did you start your research? How much more help did you get? How much did you try to do by yourself? How much of a pain was this?
That was probably the most painful part of the entire process is kind of figuring out how to fit all the puzzle pieces together. So the past year has been mostly me networking with other authors and other children's authors, other people that have been publishing books through KDP and the children publishing program. And it's one thing to publish an ebook, and the hard thing that I really found was that there's not a ton of resources about how to publish a children's book through KDP. There's a lot of resources about how to publish an ebook, if it just has text or maybe an image every now and then. But to have a full page illustration that doesn't have any white edges on it, and to make sure that the text all lines up, and to make sure that there's no objects in these certain like bleed sections where like the book is physically trimmed. So like if there was the edge of a tail was on the edge of the page, it would get rejected. And so I'd have to go in to Photoshop, and sometimes I would have to go in and like add illustration to where there wasn't illustration before, because this is one of the mistakes I made early on, is that we didn't know what the book dimensions were going to be before we had the artwork made. So we had all this beautiful artwork that our friend put together, and it was in landscape, and like the characters were really close to the edges. Well, come to find out, when you go to publish a book, landscape is not one of the options. It's either portrait, vertical, or it's square. So like, okay, well, I guess we're going to be doing a square book. That's the closest thing we can get. And then I found out that I had to add a lot of picture to the illustrations that were provided for us. And in some cases, like I had to add a lot. And I think we did a pretty good job to where you can't really tell like where the actual illustration stopped and what I added. Like, I know this is probably going to go on a podcast, but I do have like some of the images here. And if you look like where the skyline is at, like the original artwork stopped here. And so I ended up having to add all this extra illustration so Kindle would approve it and it would look good on the page and everything. And so like if you are writing a children's book, figure out what your book dimensions are going to be first before you have your really talented friend put all those blood, sweat, and tears into into making these illustrations.
And that's not your background, Photoshop and all that stuff.
No.
So you're learning this as you go, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I had to learn Photoshop. I learned how to, that's a learning curve and a half. Like if you've ever opened up Photoshop, and it's daunting, and there's a lot of tools and there's a lot of things, and I've done drawings before, but it's always been paper. Like I'm more of a sketch artist, not really a cartoonist or a digital artist. And so like there's all these things that I had to learn, and it's all a learning process, and you learn from your mistakes and you kind of make the best of what you can do. And I think kind of keeping the end in mind really kind of helps you power through kind of like the ups and downs of kind of seeing a project to completion, especially when you make a really big mistake like the illustrations, and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to buckle under and I'm going to power through this, because we really want to dedicate this book to our daughter. And we were like a year into it, and we started to visualize what the final product was going to be, and to visualize reading this book to our daughter. And it was really incredible. Like when we had the prototype copy sent to us before it was published, we sat down in her little bed and we read her this story that was dedicated to her, and she loves the beach now. And it's a really kind of cool how it timed out, because it's a beach themed book, and like these two little kids are like, they've been waiting for beach day, and all this like suspense has been building up to it. And she's 2.5 years old now, and she just adores the beach. And so like just kind of seeing her eyes light up, and she loves foxes now, and all these kind of gears are coming together, and to sit down and to read that to her, and it was really an amazing feeling. But like keeping that visualization during the times that are tough, and like when I was looking at Photoshop and I didn't know what these millions of tools did, and like trying to keep the end product in mind, and like kind of visualizing the end kind of really helped me to power through, and like, okay, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to figure out how Kindle Children's Publishers Program wants this to be done. And we made a few more mistakes along the way, but I think
so you had a bit of a last minute mistake that you were sharing before we started. Can you share what that was?
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said, there's a lot of little things that Kindle doesn't like, and so like one of the things was that it was really kickbacking a lot of things where like there was a tail on the end of the image, or there's a beach towel that was near the edge, and it detected it as an object, and it would reject us. And so just about a week before we published, I ended up going through the entire book page by page and starting from scratch and adding more detail, even more detail than I did before. So, this is like my third round going through these illustrations and the text. And up until that point, we had already had proofreaders for the book. Mm-hmm. And so we had sent out PDFs to probably a dozen or more authors and other children books writers. And so we had this like really solid proof copy. But because I had to redo everything from scratch, I was basically just kind of copying and pasting the text. But the issue is I was doing this late at night, and after 24 pages of redoing things in Photoshop, one of the mistakes I did was I forgot to change the text on one of the pages. And so, and this is how it got published, by the way, and copies started going out. And so you open up the page and you have two different pictures, but the text was exactly the same on both pages. And I'm going through it after shipments are going out, and my heart stopped. I'm like, oh my God, the book that we've been working 2.5 years on, that we've dedicated to our daughter, it has this huge mistake. And so we pulled it immediately. And this just happened a few days ago, by the way. This was Thursday. Like the last Thursday. So yeah, we had to pull it down, and we notified everybody on social media, and we have thousands of people that were like reading this stuff, and we're like, oh hey, I know we're really excited about it, but we just found this really big mistake. If you already put in your order, go ahead and send it back, and we're currently trying to fix this mistake, and we got it fixed pretty quick, and the review process came pretty quick, but it was a solid 24 hours where these books were live.
Yeah, where you're just like you let your initial readers down. You're worrying about the reviews. You can't get that, and wow, like I can just imagine what that must have been like after putting so much work, so much attention to details, and then just last minute.
And people were really understanding, and that's what really surprised me. Like, nobody was upset, and I think that a lot of them were like, hey, I got a limited edition mistake copy. This is going to be worth some money someday. And so, like, you take it one day at a time, and you kind of accept the journey. But yeah, I was surprised as far as like how patient people were and how understanding everybody was, and we like our heart stopped, but we did we did our best. We fixed the mistake, and it's live again. And so if anybody orders it now, now it's good to go.
Yeah. So you have the copy that you have. You can bring it up real quick. That's the proof copy. So you're still waiting for your final copy to come in, but it's such a great, colorful book, and it's so awesome to hear the story behind it, because there is so much that goes into doing a project like that. So what is next? Because you mentioned you want this to be a series. Are you already working on the next one?
Yeah, so one day he came home, and he works as an interpreter with a deaf student, a young deaf student, and he was frustrated, and he said, I feel really bad. My student doesn't have he doesn't like to read. He doesn't have any characters he can connect with, and it's a process. And I said, yeah, I know. And then he looks at me, and I'm like, what? And he goes, you're getting ready to write the second book. And I said, yeah, I know. I said, I'm working on it. And he's like, let's implement a deaf character into this book. And I went, huh. I said, okay. I said, we'll have to get a hold of our illustrator. Luckily, our illustrator knows sign language fluently. So he would know how to draw these cartoon characters' hands to develop and form these signs. And so I said, okay. So we're going to be working with different ones, different deaf in our community, getting their insight, their opinions on how to do it. And so that's going to be our next book, is implementing this deaf character. So the deaf students that we know and have in our community will be able to have a story that they can connect with, that they can relate to. And also kind of inspire the other students who read it to want to learn that language, to be like, look at this character. He signs. I know somebody who signs. And it's going to give them that, to be enthusiastic about wanting to learn this language that a lot of people don't ever really give a second thought to. And so we're super excited about that. That's going to be the next book. And then that character is going to be coming in sporadically throughout the series. And then, but yeah, so that's going to be the next one. And we're super, super excited about that. And the process should go a lot quicker, I think.
Now that the learning pains are over.
Yeah.
Yeah, just don't let too much time elapse, because those tools. That's the thing about using those tools. You get back to it and you're like, oh crap, I gotta learn this all over again. But I love that. Yeah, I love that. That's such a fabulous concept, and to, reach out to a community that obviously you're both very familiar with, and that you understand how, they're not included the way that really they should be. So that's really, really awesome and amazing.
Yeah, and they're definitely underrepresented, and the inclusivity can really go a long ways. And it's unfortunate because many times we've worked for a few dozen schools over the years, and probably the majority of them usually only have one deaf student in the entire school. And so it's this one deaf student with this one interpreter, and he's the only one that they have language with. And so everything else is being interpreted. On the flip side of that, like I've worked at some schools where there's multiple deaf kids and there's multiple interpreters, and the teachers go out of their way to learn sign language. There was a kindergarten teacher that I worked with a few years ago, and she would teach all of her class signs. And so like all the kids knew their colors and their numbers and their letters. They all had name signs, and to see that kind of difference and to have that kid be included in the classroom, it is makes such an impact on their life, and can really be a night and day difference. And that's something that we want to do with the children's books, because there's really not, it's very underrepresented right now. And there's maybe 3 or 4 books that we've come across that have some sort of deaf representation. And so, that's something that we really are going to be passionate about going forward, and to, have something that can offer that inclusivity, and to have like that kid say, hey, that's me, and like have somebody that have a character that they can really relate to. And I think that would be really powerful once we can get
and raise because kids are going to be interested, they're going to be curious, and they're going to want to know what it is. And what is it as a kid to learn something new? It's super easy. And most kids probably don't learn how to sign just because they're not exposed to it. If they were exposed to it, they'd be like, yeah, I'll learn this and learn it. No problem, easy peasy. And yeah, so I can't wait to see the next book. And I think it was going to give you a amazing platform to continue to raise awareness. So very exciting stuff. And it will not take as long, which is good. All right, guys, let's switch over and play the first time lightning round. I try to come up with some options that we're going to do as a couple. So it's something that either you guys have done it as a couple or not. So you might individually have done it, but did you do it as a couple? It's my first time doing that, so I'm pretty excited. So the way the first time lightning round works is I'm going to give you some option. If it's something y'all have done together as a couple, then it would be up. So if you're on the app, you would swipe up. If it's something that you've never done, not interested, we go left. And if something that you've never done, would like to do in the future, add to your list, then we go right. Ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Go to comedy show. Have you all had a date night at a comedy show?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What was your first comedy show together? Who'd you go see? Do you remember?
You know what? I think it was that Deaf Actor, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's a deaf comedian, CJ. But yes, I can't. His name just gone. It's gone.
CJ something. He's a really popular deaf comedian. So he'd be really easy to look up. But yeah, he's a hilarious comedian.
Oh, and he's completely deaf, so he does his whole show in sign language.
He actually came to our area. He performed at the Fox Theater down in downtown Visalia, and one of our friends ended up voice interpreting that comedy show for the hearing. So like usually it's the other way around, right? There's a sign language interpreter, but at that one it was flipped. So the entire show was sign language first, and then it was voice interpreted for all the hearing people there.
CJ Jones, that was his name.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Never see ignorance. I mean, you're right. If you're not exposed to it, you just don't know about it. So I am learning from you guys. I'm just curious, was the speaking portion as funny, or was it like,
oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was actually really funny because he kind of picked on him a little bit, and he was going through all these different country signs, like, oh yeah, I've been here, and then he said Bahamas, and the interpreter kind of paused for a little bit, and he's like, aha, I got you.
I got you. No, it was really good.
Awesome. Okay. Adopt a pet.
Yes.
Yes. Drive across the U.S.
Together? Driving? No.
I did before we were married.
I did before we were married, too.
Worst 4 days of my life. From California to New York.
I had a blast on mine.
All right. Okay. Go salsa dancing.
Yes, actually, we did. With Melissa and Yesenia when they taught us how to do it. So, yes, we did.
Long time ago. Mm-hmm.
Loved it. Chris's face at first was like, no, we've never done that. Johnny's like, yes, we have. I love it. Okay. Donate food.
Yeah. Yes, we have. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Eat Brazilian food.
I have not. You have?
Before we got married, I went to Brazil. We had some friends that lived in Rio de Janeiro, so yeah.
Okay. But not together, all right? Play the lottery.
Nope.
You guys got a ticket together. Nope. Okay. Play darts.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Buy a home.
Nope.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Go to a classical music concert.
I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
Just not classical fans, but when do you think?
I personally like to play. Oh goodness gracious! I personally play classical music. I'm a pianist, but we've never gone to like a classical concert.
Okay. So the next question is the first time story prompt, and you can answer those individually. The first time story prompt is first broken bone.
And they're individually?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I snapped my collarbone in half.
How'd you do that?
A dresser fell on me.
Ooh. How old were you?
I was 2.
Oh my Lord.
Yep.
I pulled the drawers out. My mom said I climbed it, and that sucker just came back and boom. Yep.
Okay, that probably could have been worse.
Yeah.
All right. What about you, Chris? Have you broken a bone?
Broken an arm when I was about 7. I was on a bike and hit the curb wrong, and my arm hit the curb wrong, and everything went wrong. So yeah.
Were you far away from home, or were you?
I was right in the driveway. We lived on the side of a hill, so I was booking down this hill, and I decided to turn into the driveway. Driveway was a little wet, and the bike went one way, I went the other way, and everything went upside down. Pretty soon I was on my way to the hospital. And
were your parents nearby, or did your parents nearby, or did you have to walk back up to the house with a broken arm?
No, they were nearby. They heard me screaming. They came.
Man, yeah, I've been lucky. Knock on wood. I've never never broken a bone. So
Fortunate.
I've chipped my collarbone. That's the worst that's happened. Well, I had a pelvic stress fracture, but that's not broken. So the chip was, and that was trying out as a young Marine, trying out for the football team. I chipped a collarbone. So yeah, that ended my football career. All right. So the final question is, how have you guys been making the best out of the current pandemic situation?
For us, it's just been coming up with things to do as a family at home. So we bought a small swimming pool for my daughter, and so we'll go out there and play with her. We've been working from home, so that's, we've made some modifications to our home office, so we were both in the same office. But yeah, just really doing the best that we can, talking with people on Zoom or FaceTime, like with his parents, because they can't see Paige. They live in Palm Springs, so we're just talking to them over FaceTime almost every day. Same thing with my parents. Just trying to stay connected with people as best as we can, and staying safe too.
Yep.
So real quick again, so people that are watching now or listening later, where can they go get the book? What's it called and where can they go get it?
Okay, so there's a couple of ways. First way is you can go to our website, aslbasics.com, and right on the front page you can get, there's a link to the book. Or if you want to go directly to Amazon, you can type in The Fox Family Adventures and it'll pop right up.
Mm-hmm. All right, awesome. Well, I hope a lot of people will get it, will read it, encourage you to continue on with the series, and that it'll be a little easier as you're moving it forward. Any final words of wisdom for anyone who's thinking about doing their first children's book?
Not to give up. Especially if you're doing a children's book that's going to have illustrations and stuff, and if you plan on doing it yourself and not hiring somebody out to do like the publishing and stuff like that for you, not to give up, but to just power through it, because you can make that goal or that dream a reality. It can come to life. You just have to stick with it. Even when you think, you know what, this isn't going to work, it will. You just have to keep going and not give up.
Yeah, and not to let the challenge overwhelm you. Take it one step at a time. Keep the end in mind. Find other people that are in your same boat. I found a group of authors that have been amazing and very supportive and helped me every step of the way. Whenever I hit a roadblock, they were there to kind of help me pick me back up and keep going. And if you can find a group of similar-minded people and people that have done it before, can really help you. And it can be a challenge sometimes, and it can be a long process, but don't shrink back from the challenge and really visualize the what it's going to be like. And if it's you're dedicating it to somebody, imagine what it's going to be like to share that with them, or to visualize, just what the end is going to be for you.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Really great advice and great story. And it took you guys over 2 years, and you had to learn a lot of new things. You had to overcome a lot. So you speak the truth to what the experience, is like, and it's completely worth doing it. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us, Ann.